Welcome to second part of week 4 that deals with the multi-level structure of organizations and to what extent that has an impact on diagnosis. Team composition is important, and we know based on the previous slides that team composition can be described in multiple ways. We can find different team characteristics, but also has a strong impact on how we calculate effects. In this part, we're going to focus on diversity. You can ask a question: to what extent diverse workforce is important for organizations? Is it good to have diverse workforce in terms of maybe gender, maybe ethnicity, or maybe it's better to focus on work-related diversity? In this part, in a few slides, I'm going to reply to this question. Diversity theory can be described in multiple ways. Diversity, social diversity, can be explained and described on the ground of different theories. For instance, we may say that similarities attract each other. So typically people form teams or groups if they are similar to each other. Based on our social categorization theory, we can say that people form groups for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is that when we form a group, we feel more confident. That also has specific consequences of how we behave. So those in-group, out-group relations, they also are important. They are a consequence of forming groups. So if there is an out-group, typically an out-group is different than us, that can lead to different conflicts, for instance. What also was found in research that homogeneous groups are more satisfied, have better communication, can be more efficient, but also do less progress. On the other hand, there's a theory that says that being a diverse or functioning in a diverse team can have specific benefits, because differences on work-related variables may lead to a wider range of knowledge, expertise, and also perspectives. So in this theory, we can find a notion that heterogeneous groups are more creative and also can perform better. So as you see, there are some advantages of working in homogeneous versus heterogeneous teams. So can we conclude that diversity is good or it's bad? So maybe when it comes to creating teams and composing teams, structure should be homogeneous or maybe should be diverse. Only females or only males or both. The same for ethnicity. Is ethnicity beneficial for teams? The best way to look at performance as a potential consequence of diversity is through meta-analysis. In a meta-analysis by Bell and colleagues, they found that variety, so diversity in gender, had a small but negative effect on overall performance, and it was even stronger for creativity. On the other hand, diversity related to age had no effect, but variety of ethnicity again had a small negative effect, and it was stronger for creativity. However, they found in this meta-analysis that variety in functional background had small positive effect, and it was stronger for creativity and innovation. What does it mean? Maybe it means that diversity is beneficial, but only some specific aspects of diversity can benefit when it comes to analysis of work performance. Clearly, in this maybe not the newest but still valid meta-analysis, they found that it's positive for functional background. Okay, that's one part. Also, we can take into account other characteristics, not gender, not ethnicity, but more psychological characteristics. So we can ask a question, maybe we should form teams of team members of the same IQ, or diverse IQ, or people of different levels of personality, only extroverts, or maybe combine open to experience extrovert and so on. Let's take a look at meta-analysis again. In this meta-analysis, they analyzed relationship between personality characteristics of team members and work performance. In this case, only field studies. They did this meta-analysis on team composition and performance, and here team performance was defined as the extent to which a team accomplishes its goals or missions. So it was very, very diverse sample of studies. Multiple companies were taken into account. So they've been trying to evaluate personality impact on performance in teams. They took into account mean value in team. So in this case, that's an effect from individual level characteristics to team level characteristic, to team performance. So overall, agreeableness had positive effect on team performance. Let's say positive relationship with team performance. In this case, you see a coefficient, it's raw, so it's corrected for different types of artifacts that can impact or could impact estimation of this relationship. Then we have relationship for conscientiousness. As you see, again, it's positive. Medium effect size, but positive. For openness to experience, lower, but still close to medium effect size. Emotional stability, rather low to medium, but still positive. And the lowest effect was for extroversion. So we can conclude that personality can positively predict performance on a team level. Also, they took into account cognitive capacity. On average, it was 0.26. The minimum value for specific type of teams, it was 0.34, so still medium effect size. But at some point, for some teams, it was not as important as in other teams, because effect was positive but small. However, in this case, for cognitive capacity, they only estimated that for teams working in production or services. Also, in this analysis, they took into account values. They found that there was really strong effect related to collectivism. So a trait that can be seen also as a multi-level construct. Personality is rather individual level construct, but collectivism can be seen as a multi-level construct because we may have strong differences between countries in terms of collectivism. And also, they estimated overall teamwork. If people work in teams, and if they preferred to work in teams, there was positive but again medium effect size for team performance of the preference of working in teams. So it means that if you like to work in teams, if you prefer to work in teams, then it has positive or may have positive consequence for teamwork. And finally, let's take a look at other aspects. As I mentioned, culture can have impact on how organization functions. In this case, in this meta-analysis, they've been looking at OCB, organizational citizenship behavior, and to what extent we can predict OCB based on organizational factors. They meta-analyze 78 studies, lots of participants, almost 22,000. So the major goal of this meta-analysis was to test relationship between perceived organizational support, so important organization variable, something that people differentiate in, and organizational citizenship behavior. The POS, perceived organizational support, is an employee's perception of being valued and cared about by the organization. So they wanted to see to what extent this specific individual level construct can explain organizational citizenship behavior, also individual level construct. But they took into account to what extent this relationship can be moderated by culture, so multi-level structure. Because you can see that people, employees, are nested within organizations, but organizations are nested within specific culture. It's also really typical for organizational psychology to study this kind of complex structures, where individuals are nested within teams, teams within organizations, and organizations within culture. It's also a really nice example how culture functions in organizations, to what extent can explain team or organizational performance. They took into account in this research collectivism, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and femininity. Collectivism is related to how people create relationships, its extent to which a society reinforces individual interests versus collective interests, and interpersonal relationships. At this point, I would like to focus on collectivism and femininity, because those are related to specific group behavior. Femininity, its extent to which society reinforces gender roles as being emotionally distinctive versus overlapping. So, to what extent gender femininity traits are important for functioning within a society? As you see in this table, there were differences between countries. USA was the least collectivistic country, South Korea was the most collectivistic. UK was the least feminine country, and Thailand was the most feminine country. In their research, they found interesting effects. First of all, they expected that there would be a relationship between POS, so perceived organizational support, and OCB, organizational citizenship behavior. And they found that this relationship is positive. So basically, if you have a feeling that organizations care about you, then you show this kind of OCB. Here, they wanted to see to what extent those effects are moderated by those four group important traits, like collectivism and femininity. As you see here, when we consider behavior that it's related to helping other, that is focused on groups, collectivism and femininity were strong moderators. It was the strongest for femininity. It means that those traits that are focused on group and caring about others can moderate individual level effects. That's it. Thank you for your attention.